The Planning Commission meeting for June 3rd, 2024 is called to order. Could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Adler?
Here.
Commissioner Gold?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Vice Chair Jamison? Here. Chair Williams?
Here.
Thank you.
Please stand. Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Next up, approve the order of the agenda. Does anybody want to make any changes to the agenda order?
No, I'll move approval.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Public comment. This is the opportunity for the public to speak on items not on the agenda but can speak on items on the consent items. So I don't have any speaker slips. Is anybody here want to speak in public comment? No? Anybody online? No?
Check the box.
So bring it back to the consent items. Does anybody want to pull any of those or have questions or concerns about them?
Not me.
Could I get a motion to,
I move to approve consent items and item 3.
I second.
moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes 5-0. Any ex parte communications that you'd like to discuss or reveal? No?
Nope.
Public hearings, item 5A. Could we have staff report, please?
So we have a public hearing adoption to consider the following. Planning Commission Resolution Number 2404, recommending the City Council take the following actions. Recommending the City Council certify the final environmental impact report, adopt findings of fact pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, adopt a mitigation and monitoring and reporting program, and adopt a statement of overriding considerations for the Solvang Comprehensive General Plan Update rezoning, SCH number 2023-060-448, and adopt the Solvang 2045 General Plan consisting of the following elements: land use, community design, economic development, mobility, environmental and sustainability, safety in public facilities and services and infrastructure. With that, I'm going to turn it to our consultant, Lori, who will be giving the presentation this evening.
Welcome, Lori.
Good evening. Lori Tamora, Planning Consultant, City of Solvang. And I'd like to go through the presentation. This is your recommendation to the City Council for adoption of the 2045 General Plan, along with the final environmental impact report that is a compendium to this process. Go ahead. The staff report detailed some of the key timelines for the project. It was kicked off in the budget hearings in 2021. The contract was approved in October of 21. The first kickoff meeting for the consultant team as well as city staff was in December. Throughout 2022, we worked on the websites, marketing, public engagement, workshops, surveys. At one point through that process, the City Council decided to create a General Plan Advisory Committee, and that was a 15-member committee, and they started holding their meetings. And we ended up with a draft element for review of each one of those different topics. And then as we moved into our assignment with the RENA numbers that were assigned by SBCAG, Santa Barbara Association of Governments, the housing element and its related documents were prepared by the consultants. And we moved into, and ultimately that effort was separated from the rest of the project, went to the Planning Commission and the City Council, and was adopted earlier this year. And the draft EIR went through the public review. The draft document was released in February of this year for a 45-day review period. And then we received 11 comment letters. And the consultants responded to those comments, provided an errata of the draft EIR, and those documents all create the final EIR for your review and adoption and recommendation to the City Council tonight. So the conclusion to that is that we're about a 2.5-year clock on putting this package together. And it was a concerted effort by the community, and I think we've accomplished a lot through this process. Go ahead. As noted in the staff report, state law has a requirement for a number of different elements within the general plan, and each jurisdiction in the state of California is obligated to create their own general plan. What we in Solvang did was rearrange some of the items so that we had different chapters. Obviously, we had the land use element. Circulation was converted into a mobility because we wanted to make sure to address things like transit, bicycles, pedestrian, circulation, all in one element, and so we use the word mobility. Housing element is a requirement that has gone on its own track and is now approved, and that is actually chapter 9 once we collate everything together, once the rest of the items are adopted. The conservation and open space element were merged into environment and sustainability, that's chapter 7. And then safety and noise were also merged together into chapter 8. The initial analysis of the city of Solvang with population and a number of different items that are required under the environmental justice chapter, Solvang didn't qualify for the necessary preparation of an environmental justice element, so it's not part of this package. Next page. The city also decided to create several optional elements, one of them being community design, economic development, and also a chapter which should be a requirement, but it's public facility services and infrastructure. And so those are all embedded in the full package of the 2020 45 general plan. Next one. So we're going to just walk through some of the items with each one of these chapters, and it's important to note that you all have received a copy of the general plan and the related EIR, and if you have any questions, we'll take that at the end. Land use was the first section, if you could move to the next page. And this is the land use map that will be part of the adoption. One of the important things is to look at the colors. You had that discussion at your last meeting, and so you can compare that to the map that's on the wall, and you can see the difference between the blues, and now we're proposing yellows based on what is normal nomenclature for planning maps. You also can see that there are a number of items identified in blue on here. These are more correctly identifying public and institutional areas. And also the green areas are now not identified as agriculture. They're identified as open space and recreation. There's a number of other items that were tweaked, but I think this gives you an overall sense of the land uses that will be not only in our general plan, but also tied to our zoning map. The land use element had a number of items that were not only making some changes and recommendations, but also some cleanup items. The first one being removal of agricultural land use designations throughout the city. Those were converted to open space and recreation, as noted earlier. We came up with a new designation for Alisal Ranch, and so that's indicated in the document. We had one little legacy project called the Coslow Lot and Building, which was previously designated as residential, but is historically known as a medical office building, dentist office. So in order to respect what has historically been on that site, we're changing it to office professional. The Bratt property, which is where the AMR use is, it's such a small little property that sometimes it gets lost on the maps, so we wanted to make sure the record was clear that that's office professional. On the Mission Sandy Inez, again, that was designated as agriculture. We're changing that to open space and recreation, but also wanted to make sure that everything that was actually developed, which includes the parking lot, the buildings, and some of the accessory buildings, are designated as public institution. There's a reflection of the village estates having a specific plan designation, which has its own little subset of policies and documents, so that's added to the maps. All of the city-owned lots, the parking spaces, the buildings, are now designated as public institution. Previously, many of those within the downtown area, the village core, were actually TRC, so they could have other uses, but it was more correct to reflect them as public institution. Site C, which is also now known as Wildwood, will have the land use designation on the south half as DR20 and the land use designation on the north portion of 20R1. The lumberyard will be changed to TRC, and then the maps will reflect the rezonings that have already been approved for lots on B and C and D. And then there's a whole series of new policies within the document that will guide the staff through review of projects in the future. Community design, this is the optional one, and if you can flip to the next page. We worked on clearly identifying what the different designations were based on the historic uses of the area. So we have the Village Area Design District, which is the Old World Danish architectural style in the TRC zone, and around the periphery of that area. And then you have, as you head out of town to the east, the Mission District is along 246 and includes the Mission property, the Vets Hall, Lumberyard, and Alamo Pintado Road. We also identified, or at least acknowledged, the residential neighborhoods north and south of the core area, and mainly the policies for those residential areas were guided by hillside development, making sure that especially those that can be seen from the core area have some respect to visual resources and hillside development. And this is an illustration of the key areas that we just talked about, the village area and then the Mission District. The green is Mission, and then the yellow is the rest of the TRC zone. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I ask what TRC means?
Oh, sorry, tourist-related commercial.
All questions need to be completed during public comment.
I'll stop using acronyms. So the economic development element was one of those that the city council wanted to include in the general plan. And if you can flip to the next page. The key directives were to expand activities and resources for the visiting public, because that is our key economic driver for the city. But at the same time, provide diversity of commercial uses to serve the local community and the visitors. Provide jobs for the residents, and mainly one of the big elements today now is increasing high-speed broadband connection. So the city is working with the county on trying to get the routes established throughout the city main corridors. We also have a policy in there that encourages mixed-use commercial and residential in the core areas, and trying to infill some of the second and third stories of some of the buildings within the city as an opportunity for housing. Go ahead. Next one is mobility, and again, this is a different name that you might see in other general plans, which is usually circulation. And the goal was to include all means of transportation and moving of people as well as goods and services. Next item. Addressing all aspects of safely moving people and goods through the city was an important element. Encouraging alternative transportation means within the existing community and planning for additional energy sources like EV, alternative energy. You may hear sometimes people talking about hydrogen or some other types of energy sources that may be coming around the corner. So we're making plans to include those as part of our planning for the city. But more importantly, we need to be very cognizant of pursuing grants and other funding sources for improvements throughout the city. And I believe that that is a high priority for the staff to be looking for those kind of funding sources. Go ahead. Again, this is one of the optional elements, public facilities, services, and infrastructure. The consultant went through a very thorough review of all of the different relationships that the city has with consulting agencies and different organizations that provide services to the city. Next page. So we have a responsibility to maintain and expand the public facilities that are part of the city's operations, like water and sewer and roads. They'll continue to do that. But the next part of it is coordinating with services provided by other agencies like fire department and sheriffs through the county of Santa Barbara, obviously the school district. The library is currently, I believe, contracted with the city of Goleta in combination with the county. And then you have other things like AMR and the hospital and a number of different other things that the city needs to coordinate with on a regular basis. One of the tasks for this particular element is updating the developer fees and user fees for services, so that matching funds from developer fees is really important when you're pursuing grants and funding sources for improvements. So the city, that is one of the tasks that will be coming back, is updating the fee program. The environment and sustainability, this is a new commingled element for conservation and open space. And we can go to the next slide. This is basically looking at encouraging the maintenance of the existing natural resources, open space, and parks, and working with future developments to see how we can coordinate some of the open space that might be part of those projects into the resources of the community. It's important for the city to coordinate and work with the county of Santa Barbara and the surrounding land uses and open space. We value the agricultural boundaries around us and visual corridors, and the collaboration between the county and the city are very important for the experience that people have living here. So we want to protect the scenic views enjoyed by the residents and the many visitors that come to Solvang. And again, pursuing grants and other funding sources for the parks and open space are an important obligation of the city. Safety, this is interesting because you sort of have public services and then you have safety. And so they kind of meld together. So go ahead. Maintaining and updating the emergency response plans and programs. That's a collaboration with the city, fire department, sheriffs, and other local agencies. We have a mutual aid agreement with the county and other agencies that we need to maintain and continue to work with when there's an emergency in the region. Consider the existing natural resources for existing and future projects, and those are important for grading, drainage, whatever else may be part of the development of a particular site. This element also merges noise as one of the other elements required by the state, but it's now embedded into the safety. Most of the issues related to noise were with construction related noise, and which is a short-term impact. And then, of course, your ongoing traffic along 246, Alamo Pintado Road, some of the other roads. And of course, pursuing grants and other funding sources to help support these efforts. So the land use, or the 2024 general plan will have 3 additional chapters. One of them is already approved, and that's Chapter 9, the housing element, will be added to this volume. There will be a glossary section just to add details on some of the terminology and acronyms that are used throughout the document. And then Chapter 11 is administration, and what that does is it pulls together all of the different tasks and directions that may be done over the next couple of years so that staff can track those and eventually accomplish many of the things that have been adopted here tonight and forwarded onto the City Council. This whole effort went through an environmental review process. There was a draft EIR that was circulated in February of this year for a 45-day review. There was 11 comment letters. The package that you received is the final EIR with the comment letters, response to the comments, and then an errata in the responses to the comments that are identified in changes to the draft EIR. That package is now referred to as the final EIR, and you'll be forwarding that on to the City Council for their adoption. Along with that is what's called a mitigation monitoring and reporting plan, and every one of those items that were identified in the EIR are now coalesced into one table that identifies the impact, the mitigation measures, and then who's responsible for making sure that those mitigation measures are implemented as projects move forward or as the city works through some of these projects that they themselves are going to be doing over the next couple of years. There were a couple of Class 1 impacts related to development, and that's air quality during construction, impacts to cultural resources, and that can be with construction or it could be outside of construction. So that, and then noise during construction. And the last one is transportation, but it goes beyond transportation. It's called vehicle miles traveled, and it talks about how the city of Solvang, as it grows, will increase traffic, but those traffic miles may be far exceed the thresholds that the county has established for the San Ynez Valley. And so that alone triggered a Class 1 impact. There are mitigation measures with each one of these Class 1 impacts, but they don't resolve the impact sufficiently enough to not make it a Class 1 impact. So the statement of overriding considerations will be the action that you'll recommend to the City Council to allow this project to move forward. Recommendation, as noted by Raphael, the Planning Commission's approval of the resolution 24-4, which includes the 2 items drafted out for the City Council to adopt, resolution 24-1253 and 24-1254. And with those resolutions, the city will have completed the task of adopting their 2045 general plan with elements.
Just a quick note, the slide here doesn't reflect the amended title of the resolution, so there are.
Oh, in total, yeah.
Yeah, there's just not 2 specific resolutions we're recommending to council, but rather just recommending adoption of the CEQA documentation and adoption of the general plan with its elements as Raphael described at the top.
Great. So I'm available for any questions. I would like to acknowledge the work that was done over the last couple of years, particularly with the GPAC and with the community providing comments. And I think it ended up being a very good product for the city's future.
Thank you, Lori. And I do want to acknowledge on our available via Zoom is our lead consultant, Mintier Harnish, who was selected to do this general plan overview. And And just want to shout out to both them and Rincon, who is responsible for the environmental. They are also on the Zoom. Both of these groups, I've worked with them in the past. They're very professional outfits, and glad I can come in at the last minute and see this to the end. So we are all here as a group to take your questions. So with that, we're going to open up to the commission for any questions.
Pardon, just prior to questions, so as discussed by Lori and outlined in the staff report, the 2045 general plan involves different land use redesignations of certain properties. So to ensure any conflicts of interest are accounted for in the commission's consideration of the general plan tonight, what we are going to be doing is segmenting out those redesignation decisions on certain properties, so we can allow for recusals of certain members on certain properties, should it be necessary. So for each item or property, we will ask the commission if there's any conflicts of interest requiring recusal. You will have an opportunity to recuse yourself if needed for the specific item, and then we will proceed with the remaining commissioners with questions, public comment, consideration, and a vote on that specific redesignation item. And then once we have completed each segment of those decisions, we'll reconvene the entire commission and proceed with questions, public comment, discussion, and a vote on the remaining CEQA and general plan items. So kind of bear with us tonight because it'll be a little bit of some procedural steps we have to take here. So we'll do this for properties for which there may be conflicts, and we'll start with the Caslow property, which is, there's a proposed residential to office professional use.
Should we go to public comment first?
So because we want to ensure, we'll do public comment for each specific redesignation, and then that we're segmenting out, and then we'll do public comment again for the remaining items once the commission is all together for the remainder of the items on the agenda tonight. So we'll start with segmenting out the Caslow redesignation decision, and if there are any potential conflicts of interest for which any commissioners would like to disclose, now would be the time to do so.
I don't have any. Anybody else?
I don't think so.
And as a reminder, some potential conflicts of interest could be your proximity, if you own or lease property, proximity to the site within 500 feet, and then potentially within 1,000 feet, depending on the potential effect to your real property interest.
Oh, that's a good question.
Can you show us on the map?
Do we have the map?
Yes, I'll bring it up in a minute. Okay, the Caslow property is right there where the finger is pointing. Based on the GIS data that we have, no commissioners within 500 feet. However, Chairperson Williams and Vice Chair Jameson is within 1,000.
So what does that mean, if we're within 1,000?
Yeah, so it means if you're within 1,000 feet, you should recuse yourselves if this recommendation and ultimate decision by council to redesignate the land use designation on this property would change your real property interests, development potential, income producing potential, highest and best use, and character or market value, and that includes substantial alterations to traffic levels, intensity of use, parking, view, privacy, noise levels, or air quality. So that's, I don't know, it's a lot of words, but those are the factors you'd be considering.
So basically what we're doing is codifying what's already existing. We're not changing anything.
That's correct.
Other than the name.
We're redesignating it So currently, the use is an office use, as a dentist use, which is currently zoned residential, so it's non-conforming. You would, in essence, make it conforming.
Right, right. So my feeling is, with me, especially being 1,000 feet away, I
gonna
don't
say
see where
I
there's
agree with him.
any conflict.
I don't either.
Okay, then we will not segment out that decision, and we'll include that with the remaining items. So we'll go through a few more properties. The next one we'll do is let's do Mission Santa Ynez. And we'll also do the lumber yards with that as well, because I believe the potential effect would be for the same commissioner on this one. And Mission Santa Ynez, it's proposing as an open space recreational and public institution redesignation, and lumber yard to be redesignated as tourist-related village commercial.
So here, Commissioner Peterson, you're within 500 feet of Mission Santa Ynez, and then you are within 1,000 feet of both Mission Santa Ynez and the lumberyard sites.
Yeah, and that's no problem. I'll recuse myself
Okay.
on those.
So we'll proceed with the recusal, and Commissioner Peterson, if you could leave the room.
Right now?
Yeah, and then we'll go and proceed with our, any questions you might have, public comment, discussion, and a vote specifically on the redesignation of the Mission Santa Ynez and the lumber yards. So that's what our discussion is going to be limited to at this time.
Okay, does anybody have any questions before we go to? Okay, well, let's go to public comment on this. Does anybody want to comment on this item? Nobody here? Anybody online? Nope, so we'll bring it back for discussion and action.
Can I make a motion to approve?
Yeah, so the motion would be a motion to recommend adoption of this redesignation as part of the general plan.
Then I make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 4 with 1 absent.
Okay, and we have Commissioner Peterson back in the room here. So we'll proceed to Site C. And Site C being redesignation to different high-density residential.
So here for Site C, the only commissioner within, or we have no commissioners within 500 feet. Chairperson Williams, you are within 1,000.
Yeah, and I think on this one, I'll recuse myself.
Okay, great, thank you. And so we'll proceed with that, and then Vice Chair, yes, if you could assume the role for the discussion of this item.
Oh, so what do I have to do?
Chair Williams would like
I've never done this. This is the first time. Oh, my gosh. Oh, you gave me the mic.
So here, I'll help guide the discussion. Open it up to commissioner comments in regards to rezoning of Site C, or excuse me, redesignation of Site C. So what this means is it'll follow the city council's recommendation for the southern 2/3 of the site to be zoned high-density residential, with the remaining portion of the site to be designated low-density residential.
I hope you were listening, because that's exactly what I was thinking.
We know.
And any comments?
No.
No.
So do we just vote on it one way or the
open
other?
up for public
Public
on that.
comment? No? Quick. That's okay, me either.
I think this is the one, is this? Oh, okay, my name, Oliver? I don't know if I want to do that. Cheryl Seeds, and, oh, this is just too weird. is this the one right across from Nielsen's?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I was just, so this is, I've heard it's very controversial, and that's all I know. But I guess this plan incorporates all kinds of considerations for how to deal with traffic, which is already at a terrible four-way stop intersection. So that's just a question, if there's.
Are there any comments on the comment?
Sure. So this is a large property that goes from Viborg all the way down to Old Mission. All that we are dealing with tonight is a recommendation that the city council ask the GPAC and us to consider to just rezone the lower third of it, the southwest corner of it, where Old Mission and Alamo Pintada come together. It's not the entire parcel all the way up. This rezone, and staff would help me out, I believe is saying we can rezone that one parcel to allow for 35 to 40 units. And in the middle of this process, the owner has invoked something called a builder's remedy, asking for 100 and some units to go all the way from Viborg all the way down. This motion is to follow what City Council has recommended, which is just the southwest corner being rezoned. It is not the large property rezone. And I don't know if staff can fill in some of those gaps.
Yes, so just to correct the nomenclature, we are designating, not rezoning this evening. So these are general plan designation. Zoning is the function of the actual land use entitlement process. So with that being said, that is correct, Commissioner. We are redesignating the 2.5 acre site that is on the lower end at the corner of, we are recommending Old Mission and Alamo Pintado to be designated as high-density residential, consistent with what the council direction was, and the remaining portion to be low, medium-density residential. As stated in the staff report, the proposed land use designation does not affect the current application in process at this site, nor constitute approval of the application that is in process and has been deemed incomplete at this time by city staff. That is on a separate track. It will be a separate public hearing, and it goes through a separate approval process.
And one other clarification to that, what Raphael was correct in his statement. If you look at the illustration, there is a parcel at that south corner that's only just less than an acre. The designation for this property will go to about the midpoint of the property, will be about 2.5 acres that are 20 units per acre. And then the northern half will be the 20R1 designation. So I just wanted to make sure that people didn't see that map and see the parcel, the smaller parcel, and just rely on that being designated as the 20R1 or the 20,000 units per acre designation. Okay.
And then you can proceed with commission discussion on the item.
Pardon me?
You can proceed with commission discussion on the item.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Not for me.
Not for me.
So if no further discussion, then the next would be a motion, and it could be a
Motion
motion
and a second.
to recommend.
I'll motion to
Recommend.
approve the rezoning of Lot C
Yeah, it'd be-
per the recommendations.
Yes, recommend adoption of the land use redesignation on Site C as part of the general plan.
That was exactly what I was about to say.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. Yeah.
I think she's ready to take over as chair.
Yeah, you can have it back.
Okay, now that Chair Williams has rejoined the room, our last segmented property is going to be a Site B redesignation. So we will go through any potential recusals on Site B.
I think I had to recuse myself before on this site. I'll do it again.
Oh, great.
You're doing great.
Are there any other recusals on this site?
Yes.
Can we check the map on that one?
And Chair Williams, if you would remain in the room just until we get all the recusals logged on this one,
So for
in
clarification,
case. there are.
so Chair Williams and Vice Chair Jameson are within 500 feet. Commissioner Gold, you are within 1,000. But again, this is just solidifying a redesignation that's already been approved by the council.
So shouldn't I be recusing myself?
And I would just remain seated just for the moment before we finish the recusals here. Are there any further commissioners?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I think I'm okay.
Okay, then,
I don't
Chair-
see how he cannot, I'm farther away than you are.
No, you are within 500 feet. You edge of your property. It gets based on edge of property, not where the house location is. So your
Okay.
property is larger. And so
Okay.
you just nick the corner.
Oh, my. Leave it to me.
Whereas Commissioner Gold, you are outside of the 500, but you are within 1,000. So if there's no real estate conflicts, then you can.
I don't believe there's any real estate conflicts.
okay. So Chair Williams and
I know.
Chair Jameson, if you could please recuse yourselves. Thank you.
I believe you have to elect a chair for this one, since both the vice chair and chair have
We have
recused
to
themselves.
elect someone?
Yes.
Oh, well, I nominate Aaron.
I was going to nominate you.
I was going to as well. And that'd be a 2-0 vote.
That's fine.
Go ahead, Aaron.
All right, so on this issue, are there any questions of staff by commissioners?
No questions from
No.
And then we would open up to public comment at this point, if anybody would like to speak on this item. Seeing none, and nothing on Zoom to make any comments. Therefore, we bring it back to our commissioners for any comments, not questions, but if you had a question that you forgot and now remembered, or any comments. Seeing none, then we'll bring it back to a motion perhaps, and a second.
I think you're reading my mind right now and could probably
Sure.
say exactly what's on my mind.
So this would be a motion to recommend adoption of the land use redesignation on Site B as part of the 2045 general plan.
See, took the words right out of my mouth. Aaron.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There's the motion, and we have a second.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 3-0.
Well done, by the way.
Aaron, good.
Yeah.
That was,
You might have a future here.
I seriously.
Chairman for a while.
And that's why I nominated you.
Thanks, Keith.
I second that.
Okay, and we can proceed with everything else that is included in the agenda and that you're considering this evening.
And remind me where we are now?
Sure, so we'll be starting with any questions you have of staff on the remaining items of the CEQA documentation and approvals and the general plan.
Can I just ask a point of order? So we're dealing also with the land LSL Commons that we would call? But there is no conflicts that you have already, I just want the public to hear. We're not short shifting that one. It's just that nobody lives within 5 or 1,000 feet of that.
Correct.
particular parcel.
So the Alisal Commons, the guest ranch, the public facilities rezone, those redesignations, all those that have been pointed out by city staff, those have no interest within 500 feet or 1,000 feet of the commission.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody have any questions?
I got nothing.
Nothing? Nobody?
Nope. Public comment.
Oh, we can go back to public, okay. So, does anybody in the public wish to speak on the remaining items? I can't read who's there. So. Steve Fort?
Yes. Thank you. Hi, Steve Fort with, excuse me, SAPS Land Use Consulting. I had submitted some comments related to Alisal Ranch and the land use designation that you're hopefully going to adopt tonight and move forward with staff's recommendation. And I just want to say thank you for taking in our comments and considering our comments. And it looks like they are incorporated into the staff recommendations. So we're hopeful and looking forward to hopefully you folks moving forward with that recommendation tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Who's the second person who has their hand up?
I believe it's Brandon.
Brandon, do you wish to speak?
Yes, good evening. I just had a question. In reading through the documentation, and
State
perhaps
your
Steve-
name and,
Yes, my name is Brandon Sparks Gillis.
okay, thank you.
And perhaps Steve Fort could actually address this, but reading within the context of this new designation to guest ranch, what are the specific uses which the LSL would seek to do within that new designation? The language that I'm reading seems pretty open to interpretation for a number of different things, so I'm just curious specifically what that might entail.
Raphael, do you want to address that?
So the land use for the guest ranch is just that. It's broad. The next step of this is actually the implementation portion. We will be bringing back what's called our zoning implementation to amend the zoning ordinance to align with the general plan. So again, that'll be a separate item that is coming back in two steps. The first step is in July. And then the second step will be in August to the commission based on the comments we hear from the commission in July. But it is envisioned that the uses in the Alisal Ranch would include lodging facilities, would be an allowed, or would, a lot of things would be what's called conditionally allowed. Agriculture would remain to be an allowed use by right. And then things like the meeting facilities, et cetera, those are currently in draft form, but would likely be proposed to be conditionally allowed uses. So they would have to go through their own separate entitlement processes if any expansion or anything like that is done in the future.
Okay, and in each of those endeavors, is there the option for public comment or on each use case?
Yes. So that zoning is so the general plan is sort of this 30,000 foot level. Zoning becomes the 10,000 foot level. So again, that the zoning portion is not what we're discussing tonight. Zoning does get into the nitty gritty of actual uses. So a workshop will be done in July regarding that and planned for August as well. So those 2 months that'll be on the commission's next docket.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't see any hands up. So, I can't believe nobody has any questions.
Well, I'll have a question. Is this the time that we also, are we talking about just the rezones, or are we talking about everything, the design districts also?
So we'll get to that in a minute. I just want to verify that we'll close public comment, and then we can go back to commissioner questions.
Okay, the public comment is closed, and we've brought it back to the commission for discussion.
So to answer your question, Commissioner Peterson, now it's the entire document. So if you have questions in regards to the design districts, and again, we went over the land use redesignation of certain real properties, but now this is a discussion for the entire document. So if there are questions of the entirety of the document, including public services and facilities, the mobility chapter, et cetera,
Mobility, yes.
now is the time to ask those and make any additional recommendations to the council.
Thank you.
I have a questions that include the EIR.
Yes, very much so. And again, our consultant, Rincon, is here to answer those questions.
Okay, well, I have one question on the EIR, talking about the vehicle miles traveled. I looked up the Appendix G and went through that and got thoroughly confused. One of the things in there is that they're talking about through 4050 and not, or 2050, not 2045. I don't know if that would make a difference in their calculations. And second thing was, it wasn't clear to me what population numbers they're using to base their vehicle miles on.
So the population number is based on build out, but then the other question I'm going to turn over to our consultant team. Amber, I know you're on the line if you'd like to answer that question.
Raphael, this is Matt Maddox from Rincon Consultants. Happy to take that.
Perfect.
That's all right.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Good evening, Commissioners. Matt Maddox, Principal with Rincon. We supported the Minter Harness team and the consultant team in preparing the environmental impact report. Regarding the first question related to 2050 versus 2045, there is no difference. So the 2045 modeling that was done and performed as part of the analysis that was used in the EIR is based off the SB-CAG model pared down to the build-out year of 2045. So using 2050 and then paring it down, there is no difference. It's still looking to the same thing. 2050 was determined for SB 743, which is ultimately the question that's used in Appendix G of the CEQA checklist. That's used as part of the GHG targets that the state has at the state level. But for 2045, we simply do a back calculation to understand what those would be and then connect that to the VMT threshold that's ultimately used in the document. So there is no apples to oranges comparison. We actually use a connection to make those comparable from that standpoint. Regarding the second question, can you repeat that second part again?
What population numbers did you use in your calculations? It sounded like you just said you used the SB-CAG projections. And would it make it, is that correct?
The SB-CAG is used for the vehicle modeling. The document itself in the EIR uses Department of Finance projections for existing population. And then we do the projection out to 2045 based on the net unit increase and jobs increase that's used, and then pair those as a comparable to SB-CAG projections as well. So we use a factor that's used for both. In terms of the numbers, there's really not a drastic difference. And if you give me a few minutes, we could look up some of the locations of where those are listed in the EIR.
I don't, unless somebody has a question, I don't think we need to go to that detail. I was just curious about, I couldn't figure out from reading your charts what numbers you actually used. So I'll believe you when you say they're consistent. So that was the only question I had on the VMT. I do have a question on the population. He mentioned some finance committee, and I noticed that the SB-CAG numbers and the numbers that are in the general plan as far as projected population growth are different. And there's an explanation of where the SB-CAG numbers came from. But the other number that's in there that apparently we're using to base everything on, there was no explanation of where that number came from.
The DOF number, Department of Finance?
Yeah, I didn't see any place where that was explained. It just showed the number.
So the Department of Finance uses quite a few metrics for theirs, live birth statistics. The tax sales, tax returns. It's essentially it's the arm of it's California's taxing services. So very similar to IRS is how they project out. They also yearly request from us numbers in terms of units created, et cetera, to help in their modeling.
So that's where the, 73 or 7,300 number came from?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. There was another thing that I had. Let me see if I can find it. Well, one thing, as long as I'm here, on page 931, What is that? It's not referenced anywhere, it's just the last 931, 932 are the last two sections of the Exhibit E. And so I'm not real sure why that's there.
So 931 refers back out to exhibits and also texts. And as indicated in the staff report, you just received a text version versus the actual pictures and other things, because the resolution does reflect that the pictures and maps will be updated consistent with the final EIR. So the genesis was, again, to focus on the text that was there.
Okay. But like you list, just looking at the first one, the CD1, then you go to CD3. Why isn't CD2 in there?
Again, it's a list of figures and pictures that aren't included in there. It'll be cleaned up as a part of the final document.
Ah, okay. So you need a header on that page saying what it is. Good.
Yeah, yes, again, it was meant for text purposes only, because the focus on was, because the community design chapter had a substantial amount of revisions from the GPAC by the consultant team, that you would just receive the text version of that.
Okay, so I'm going to jump around here since my papers are all mixed up. On the page 533 of attachment C, the resolution, just a suggestion on item 2B, where you talk about allowed uses, employee housing, restaurants, and recreation and entertainment and agriculture. I think you should take out two of those ands and just leave the commas so that it reads, employee housing, restaurants, comma, recreation, comma, entertainment, comma, and agriculture. Just, that's a nit. But I think it would make more sense or read better. And let's see. Exhibit A, I didn't have anything in there. Exhibit B. On the Exhibit B of attachment C, there's no page numbers, but it's the statement of overriding considerations.
Which one is it, Jack?
The CEQA findings and fact and statement of overriding considerations. It's listed as attachment C, but it's attachment C of Exhibit B. Exhibit B of attachment C, I had that backwards. But it's this. It's at the very end of, I think, attachment C. So, refresh my memory. On page 3, it says that decision-making agency to balance the benefits of the project against the significant avoidable impacts. I don't understand what that means. Agency.
So, again, as stated in the presentation earlier, the statement of overriding considerations is required for the 4 Class 1 impacts that we can't mitigate. So essentially, that was the noise for construction, there was cultural resources, vehicle miles traveled, and missing one, air quality, I believe. Right. So the statement of overriding considerations is required by law to basically states in a nutshell, we as an agency, and eventually you as a planning commission are recommending to the council that while the EIR has mitigation, it just doesn't bring it down to what's considered a less than significant threshold. But because this general plan is, for financial purposes, for good land use planning purposes, we find that it is okay to adopt it based on these reasons and rationales. So that's why we were required to have those.
No, I wasn't questioning that. I was just questioning the grammar. The decision-making body to balance the benefits, shouldn't it say the decision-making body or agency will balance or should balance, not to balance?
We can make those changes.
I mean, otherwise, it's not really much of a sentence. So believe it or not, I did read most of this, not everything. On page of the same document, on page 39, at the very top, it says the comparison to the second sentence there, in comparison to the PRO's budget's anticipated 2045 population of 7,253, which is fine, except on page 43, it talks about the population of 7042. And also in section 412-5 of the EIR, it uses the 7042 number. So one of those has to be corrected. They should be consistent. And I assume that the number is the 7253 because that's used everywhere else except for the two places that I just mentioned.
Totally noted.
Okay. I think that's all I had. My biggest concern was the VMT and how it was calculated. I just didn't understand it from what was there. So, Aaron.
Couple questions and a comment. I'm looking at, and this probably goes back to Matt, the consultant. I'm sure it does. It's on the traffic study that was done. So that's on our large packet. And I've got it at 4.1126. And we've talked a lot. I guess it's a question because we've chatted a lot in town about traffic and bypassing that's going on as Mission Drive becomes more and more impacted because now they get foisted onto Viborg and they go to Elm and they go to Oak Street and they go to Copenhagen. And I guess my question is, on this traffic, unless I'm missing it somewhere, I don't see anywhere on the traffic study where it talks about Copenhagen Drive traffic. We've talked about bypasses. It doesn't really talk about Oak Street. And I don't know if we can just look at that chart again on 4.11-26. Matt can probably answer it for me very quickly. When I look at this and I look at Copenhagen Street, because again, we've talked about walking streets and what do we do and is traffic bad on it. We have studies on Copenhagen from Atterdag to First Street, but there's no numbers from First to Alisal, unless I'm missing it somewhere. And they don't just go away. There's 1,465 is the number to not talking about from First Street to Alisal. The same occurs on Oak Street. If we look at Oak Street, from 5th Street to 2nd, there's 2,700 cars, 2,669 precise. From 2nd Street to 1st, it's 2,484. Does it really drop to 572 from 1st Street to Oak Street? if it does, then Oak Street is not a bypass from Fifth to Alisal, which we've all concluded it is. And if the numbers don't lie, then it says that it really is not a bypass and that people are full of hooey when they think that everyone's using Oak Street to get from Fifth to Alisal. And more importantly, Copenhagen is the same way. It drops from 1,465 to 0, not being studied. And I'm just wondering if there's a number that's missing for those 2 blocks, which is pretty important from First to Alisal on Oak and Copenhagen, or I'm not making a big mountain out of it. I'm just wanting to know, because as we start studying bypasses, those are 2 key bypass roads in Solvang. So it's a technical question. Was it left out? Did I miss something somewhere?
I'll take a shot, and we can certainly find out more details with the traffic consultant DKS who performed the traffic modeling for this analysis. My understanding as a whole, and this is somewhat of a change in CEQA in general in the past few years, is rather than looking at the old model of looking at level of service and congestion on each and every road-based segment and then doing a trace, the SB-CAG model that we look at is more from a vehicle miles traveled approach, so it's more of a global. Those numbers that you're looking at are actually used for the noise contour map that gets built into the noise element and ultimately the noise section of the EIR analysis. So there are some holes in there, not to say that those numbers don't exist or it was zeroed out, but they were used for noise contour modeling purposes, not for traffic congestion modeling, because traffic congestion is not allowed or brought into the CEQA analysis based on state law.
Okay. Well,
Now, what I will confirm,
that answers
though,
why it's not in there. It just
correct.
1 block east-west from First to Alisal, 2 major east-west. It's not included at all, and it just seems. I mean, believe me, this is more of a political question as to what are we going to do with bypass and traffic, and then it's not in there. I was really anxious to see those numbers, but you've answered it. It's on noise. I guess the noise goes away for the last block, which doesn't make a lot of sense either. But I'm not asking to make a change. It was more of a question just so that it's on the record. Then I had another issue, which is more important, I think, to the town, which those of you that sat on the GPAC advisory, we came up with, and if you look at our design, what is it entitled? City of Solvang Exhibit D, right? That has a map on the front. So we came up with 3 designations for design. One is called the village area, one is the mission area, and one is the other. And we did that, and there are a few members here that were on GPAC, to kind of, we've always had it so that the downtown area was the Northern European, then you went to the mission, and it went all the way down the hill and included the gas station area and everything on Alma Puntada, commercial development and residential. And then everything else is California Ranch. We just kind of left it up very, very generically, obviously wanting to protect downtown historical Northern European look. So I'll back up to where we did a housing element 10, 12, 13 years ago, and we were short houses and we rezoned some properties to try to meet our needs. And one of the properties is down on Alma Puntada, where there's a 35 or 40, don't quote me exactly, condominium going in that Ken Hunter is putting in, wonderful. One behind Demarcus Square on Alisal, where Ken Hunter is putting in the 11 or 12 or 10, wonderful. We also, and we rezoned those to do multifamily from commercial. We also rezoned from 4th place, if you will, on Copenhagen, down to 5th. So 4th is that short run. So 5th down to the Wine Valley Inn. We rezoned that to multifamily. We met our RENA numbers. At that point, at the time, we met our numbers with those. At the time then, we did an overlay to allow vacation rentals from 5th down to 4th place or Wine Valley Inn. We've now designated that area on our map. If you turn to page 917 on that map, that one chunk has been eliminated from our village area designation. It used to be in the TRC, and it was certainly within our Northern European, but because it went multifamily, we chunked it out in this document. And we had many discussions regarding this, me particularly, and other people saying, well, we should have that still in our village designation of Northern European. And so that was discussed many times, and I thought it would have been included, and it wasn't. So it's not in the downtown Northern European, it's not in the mission, of course, and it's not, it's in the other, meaning that it can be any designation you want, and yet in my point of view, Copenhagen is 5 blocks long, from Fifth to Alisel. It is the core unit. We have right across the street from it, European Northern designation. We don't have it in that one block, yet we have done an overlay, not multifamily. There are, just for point of reference, residential designations that are in the mission designation. So if you're going to do houses, you're going to have to do mission designation in those. And so I think it was an oversight. Maybe other folks that were on the GPAC would talk about that block of being non-designated into it. And I use the example of the 3 units that were put on First Street, that are the 3 condominiums or individual single families that are the blue buildings, because that is definitely multifamily. It's always been multifamily. It was never in the Northern European. Therefore, they are certainly not in the Northern European, even though the BAR or Design Review Committee could have made it, because it was under their power to make that change. I'm trying to clear it up, because the 2 buildings that have been built recently there are Northern European design if you drive down there, but there's another chunk in between and a chunk on the end, and I think that it ought to be included, even though it's zoned multifamily, it's vacation overlay, it ought to be included in our village area designation from a design standpoint. I know that we are also, the Design Review Committee is working diligently and will be over the next 6 months. We'll probably be involved with trying to hone our design element to be more objective than subjective, and that will come. But in the meantime, I would hate for somebody to buy a piece of property there and say, oh my gosh, I can do Spanish, I can do other than, I can do ranch, or do I have to do the Northern European, which it has historically been? So I would like to just take that map, if it was up here, we could see it better, but you guys have it, and just chunk out from Fifth down to, there it is. Just that always was in TRC. But when we rezoned again to DR20, then we chunked it, we never chunked it out. It chunked out in this iteration that went through. So unless staff says we can't do that because it's DR20, yet we have, again, DR20 designations. As an example, the lot that we just did on Old Mission and Alma Pintada is in the Mission District. And that we just rezoned to DR20. Does that mean it's no longer in Mission? It has to be in the other. So to be consistent with our town, that's what I'd like to see. And I would I don't have a problem with anything else other than I would like to see that as a change when we recommend to City Council, because it's a very important strip of land right there. That's my comment.
Can I ask staff, Raphael, why that was excluded?
I was not privy to that, so I'll let Lori take it. But I do have an answer in terms of if you recommend it, and I'll let Lori explain, and then she can turn it back to myself.
I believe that Commissioner Peterson pretty much described the transition of that site, and as you can see with the property right next door, we have a 3-unit project that is just finishing up. That is a vacation rental property, and the DRC and the staff worked hard on that one to carry forward the architectural style. The property on 5th Street went through several iterations, the one that's under construction right now, and we transitioned that into an old world style, 3 stories, but it should be interesting to see that one finish out. So I believe that what is being suggested here is appropriate for the continuation of the 2/3 vacant lots that are along that side there. I think it would be appropriate.
And again, it's not pointing fingers. We talked about it. We had so many things slip through the cracks as we were changing and didn't have our city manager and things, because I know we had chatted about it. So I just happened to Gotcha.
And the other part of that is, again, it is zoned DRC or DR 20, but it also has that flex designation for vacation rental. So we are respecting that designation from the previous housing element, and I think it's appropriate to have it in either option, DRC in the design residential or vacation rental. It should respect the village core architectural style.
Lori, do you have any problem with amending that map to include that area in the village zone?
I don't have a problem with it, especially because it was in the DRC or in the architectural style previously. But realize that, and I'm going to probably hear Raphael here in a moment, realizing that we also have to go through the objective standards. And if they go with a residential project, even the DRC may have limited review of the project. So that's what's coming next.
Yeah, that's correct. So I concur with Lori and I concur with Commissioner Peterson's, comments here. It does lend itself to be of the old European design, and we can most certainly. You can also most certainly make that recommendation to the council. The council also decided to pick that portion up, and I will caution you, as I will caution the council in the same fashion, that if it were amended and a residential developer were to come in during this transition time, that until we codify objective design standards, we can only ask for so much. The developer can only, a wise developer would come in with open ears, and again, we're changing our processes a lot. We actually do have a developer that's working to do an infill development of those 2 lots. We strongly encourage them to do what's called a pre-application review so that we can then properly vet it in the way and let them know that we strongly encourage that they do this in so many ways. But by adding this in, this basically gives staff the direction and the latitude to then, as a part of the zoning implementation, put on the overlays that are necessary and make those Northern European objective standards and calling out what needs to get done, so that way, if a developer wants to deviate from that, the path becomes a whole lot harder. So I would concur with Lori's comments as well as the Commissioner Peterson, that if you want to make that recommendation, we most certainly can accommodate that change. You can carry that recommendation over to the council.
Okay. With that said, I've got a motion.
Thank you. It's, I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yes.
For sure.
So, no more questions, concerns, issues?
Well, quick question, before we move on, do we make a motion on that specific issue now, or do we hold off? Is there a more appropriate time to do it later?
You would want to add it as a part of the motion. So if we want to,
I think I got it.
take the motion as is and then add that on and then vote, correct?
Yeah, correct. And also, just because we've done those segmented decisions, any motion I would request adds that the resolution be amended to reflect the segmented decisions.
Exactly. So with that said, I propose to approve resolution number 24-04 with the recommendation of Commissioner Peterson with the village designation on Copenhagen and with the grammatical corrections from Chair Williams.
And to reflect the segmented decisions as well.
That was the next thing I was about to say.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0.
Awesome.
Excellent.
That was a good catch, Aaron.
So I have a question on procedure moving forward. This recommendation goes to the city council, assuming they approve this in one form or another, is what's defined as the draft EIR, will that become the final EIR?
Yes, the final EIR is what ultimately gets adopted, which contains the mitigation monitoring, which is what is kind of the most important aspect. So when a couple of commissioners did ask questions of what to study and what to review, I made it very clear the mitigation monitoring is EIR light, essentially. It gets down to the point of what we're really looking for. This does go to commission, or excuse me, council on July 9th.
Right, and same thing with the general plan, which is right now a draft.
That is correct. The drafts labels will be removed if it gets approved by the council, and then the cleanups will be made consistent with the resolutions.
And if it's approved, does it have to go to the state again, or the county, or is it just
No,
within the
we do
city?
file it with OPR, Office of Public Research, but Office of Planning and Research. But aside from that, it goes into effect immediately. So any applications that are in process that have not been deemed complete will have to now conform with that.
Great.
We will need to file a notice of determination with the state on the adoption of the environmental impact report, and then it tracks through the state in regards to the final adoption of the EIR. So there is a moment in time when the state is reviewing that portion, but that's really the only reporting that we need to do for the adoption of the general plan.
Okay, well, I've lost my schedule, but I think the next thing was discussion, general discussion. Anybody have anything you want to bring up?
Just comments on things. Just, this has been a process, obviously. We've gone through a few leadership role changes at the city, and it was a tough one. And again, I've commented this many times. We are hamstrung by what the state is requiring us to do on the arena numbers and such. And I mean, we're not the only ones. Carp's facing it, Montecito. I mean, you see what's going on there in the county and city. So we're not the only ones facing it. And that was obviously the big bugaboo on this, other than some technical little things on design and these new elements. And so thankfully, Randy has been here, Rafi's been here helping us out and leading us through. So we appreciate it. Oh, and Lisa. Holding down the fort. Anyway, thanks.
Okay, so on
report.
on the report, yes.
Yeah, I'll make it brief. Again, a big heartfelt thank you to those commissioners who were on GPAC, as well as you commissioners who sat here through joint workshop sessions. This is actually a very monumental moment. And again, a great thank you to Lori, who really led this effort during a time when we were very short-staffed, and our consultant team, Mintir Harnish and Bryn Khan, they've been a great help on getting this to the finish line. So again, big thank you to the GPAC, who, 15 chefs in the kitchen is hard, but we managed to get through with it. So with that being said, don't pat your back too hard. As much as we hopefully have a shiny new document by July 9th, the heavy lifting starts now. So you will have a meeting on July, I'm sorry, but that meeting will be another workshop. I did bring an item back in May that talked about land use definitions and zones. We're bringing it right back to you, this time with a much more refined version, so that you can take a look, pick apart, tell us what we got wrong, go fix it, and go do it right. So the vision is to take that to both you and the DRC, with that item coming back to you in August. So that is actually going to be step one of the implementation effort of this general plan. It is a rezone to make consistent with the hopefully newly adopted general plan. This rezone will eliminate some zones, will basically mash a couple residentials together, but most importantly, it will do three things. Update our land use definitions, which are antiquated and need massive revision. Two, it'll update development standards. My hope is to actually include some very down and dirty objective standards for ADUs as well as single-family homes. So that way this commission and DRC can get a taste of what those look like. And then finally, overhaul of our entitlement process to really align with our council goals to reduce red tape and then reduce timing frames and speed up entitlements. I think those three key areas are the big changes that you're going to be seeing. And it also more in lines with our small and mighty department. So hopefully you're here in July. It'll be probably the only item that we have. We are also light on DRC items this month simply because we don't have many applications coming through. Just a quick Site C update. Tomorrow morning, I will be posting a letter from Santa Barbara County Fire Department to our website. They have actually they finished their 30-day review and they have approved the site plan based on what they've seen and added some conditions. I know that's a big concern with a lot of residents in terms of fire safety and access, but I usually defer to the people that do that. So we'll be posting that letter there on our website. Randy, do you want to add anything that's going on?
I think he covered it all.
Oh, and then one last thing. We are, again, I know there's a lot of been huge changeover in staff, but myself and Candace from my counterpart in Parks and Rec will be doing a business talk at the end of June. So we're going to get together with the businesses in the village and really we want to start doing this every about a quarter just to give businesses a heads up of what's going on in the next few weeks and months. And also, again, for our department to really assess some eyes and ears of what's going on with our business community because, as much as we serve our residents, we also need to serve our business community as well, as they are the lifeblood of our community and they help make things go here in town. So hopefully this is the first one of many business talks that we're going to have with our business community. And again, to be out a little bit more at the forefront of a lot of our activities that are ongoing in this community and what makes this community so special. With that, I'll wrap up my report.
One point of clarification, she's with marketing, not Parks and Rec anymore.
Right.
And she does a great job and all that. But the other thing I want to point out, and Raphael kind of touched on it, this is our first step in trying to improve communication with city staff and a business community. A lot of consternation about codes and enforcement. And this is, again, the first step in what will be a long, arduous process to get these things resolved and get everybody. One of my kind of marching orders is compliance, not enforcement. And you've heard Raphael just mention it a moment ago, red carpet, not red tape. So we're trying to work this out. And these collaborative efforts with the business community will get us started down that path.
Okay. Thank you. I think with that, we can adjourn at 7:28.